The gang war that ripped through America's prisons. The alarm in Redwater State Prison screamed through the halls as two of the strongest gangs inside, the Iron Serpents and the Black Crows, charged at each other in the middle of the yard. Inmates ran in every direction. Officers yelled for everyone to get down. But no one listened. The leaders of both gangs, Mason Cole of the Serpents and Ray Turner of the Crows, were already face to face. Mason shouted that the Serpents owned the yard now. Ray yelled back that the Crows would never bow to anyone. The whole place felt like it was shaking. People weren't fighting for territory anymore. They were fighting for survival. And just when it looked like the officers might get control, something happened behind the crowd that made everyone freeze and look over their shoulders, something that changed the war forever, though no one knew it yet. Earlier that year, Redwater had been strangely calm. Not peaceful, but calm enough that the warden thought things were improving. New rules were put in place. More guards patrolled the halls. The gangs were forced into smaller groups during recreation time. For a moment, it seemed like the Serpents and the Crows were willing to stay away from each other. Mason Cole spent most of his time in the workshop, acting like he didn't care about gang matters. Ray Turner spent his hours in the library, pretending to read, while keeping a close eye on everyone walking by. They both knew the calm wouldn't last, but they didn't say it out loud. The real trouble started with something small, something almost too simple to matter. A younger inmate named Danny Thompson accidentally bumped into one of the Serpents in the lunch line. Danny wasn't in a gang. He wasn't strong or dangerous. He apologized right away. But the Serpent he bumped, a hot-headed guy named Luke Bradshaw, didn't like apologies. Luke pushed Danny hard, and Danny fell onto another table. Some of the Crows saw this happen and stood up fast. They were tired of the Serpents acting like they owned everything. Ray Turner didn't want to fight that day. He told his men to sit back down. But Mason Cole saw the whole thing from across the room and walked over. He told Luke to stand down, which surprised everyone, including Luke. Mason rarely stepped into small problems. He usually saved his energy for real threats. But something about Danny's scared face bothered him. Maybe Mason saw someone who reminded him of his own little brother, who he hadn't spoken to in years. Maybe he was trying to show he could rule without fear. Or maybe he just didn't want trouble that early in the morning. No one knew for sure. The next day, rumors spread that the Crows thought they had forced Mason to back down. That wasn't true, but rumors inside a prison grow fast. It didn't take long before both sides started sending quiet messages through hand signals, folded notes, and looks across the yard. One wrong word, one wrong move, and the whole place would explode. In the middle of all this tension, Danny kept his head down. He wanted nothing to do with gangs. He tried to stay invisible, but that was almost impossible in Redwater. People started whispering that Mason was protecting him. Some said Danny had become a Serpent without even knowing it. Others said he was spying for the Crows. Poor Danny didn't understand any of it. He barely slept. He barely ate. He just wanted to go home one day. The pressure built for weeks. Officers sensed something coming, but didn't know what or when. The warden ordered more lockdowns, which only made things worse. Locked cells gave the gangs more time to think, plan, and hate each other. Mason and Ray both tried to keep their members under control, but the younger guys were restless. They wanted action. They wanted respect, and they were tired of waiting. Finally, the day came when the officers opened the yard again. It was a warm afternoon, and the sunlight made the fences shine like sharp silver. The Serpents walked out first. The Crows followed minutes later. Everyone watched everyone. Danny stood near the back, praying no one noticed him. Then Luke Bradshaw, the same Serpent who started the first problem, stared at Danny across the yard, his face twisted with anger, like he'd been waiting weeks for this moment. Without warning, he started walking toward Danny. Fast. Too fast. The Crows noticed instantly. Ray Turner stepped forward, ready to cut Luke off before things got worse. But Luke didn't slow down. Danny backed up, shaking, with nowhere to run. Mason yelled Luke's name. Ray shouted for his men to stay calm. Officers tightened their grip on their batons. And then, right in the middle of the yard, Luke suddenly reached behind his waistband and pulled out something that made every single person around him gasp. The officers sprinted forward. The inmates froze. The entire prison held its breath as Luke raised it high, his face full of rage, and everyone realized exactly what he was about to do. For a single, tense second, the entire yard stood still as Luke Bradshaw lifted the makeshift weapon above his head. It wasn't sharp, but it was dangerous enough. Something carved from plastic and hardened in secret, the kind of thing inmates could make when guards weren't looking. Danny froze. His legs felt like they were stuck to the ground. He couldn't shout. He couldn't turn. He could only stare at the weapon shaking in Luke's hand. Before Luke could swing, Mason Cole lunged forward. He grabbed Luke's arm and yanked him back, shouting at him to stop. The force of Mason's grip made Luke stumble, and the weapon slipped from his hand and skidded across the yard. Officers rushed in, yelling for everyone to get down. But the moment Mason touched Luke, the war that had been building finally burst open. Some of the Serpents thought the Crows had jumped in. Some of the Crows thought Mason had started something. Within seconds, inmates on both sides were shouting and pushing, and the officers were trapped between two angry waves. Ray Turner, seeing the chaos spread, ran toward the center of the yard. He wasn't trying to fight. He was trying to stop a disaster. But his men misread his movement, thinking he was charging at Mason. A group of Serpents surged forward to block him, and the Crows rushed to meet them. The yard exploded into confusion. People shoved each other. Shouts echoed off the concrete walls. Officers blew their whistles so loud it hurt, but no one listened. Danny dropped to the ground, covering his head. He wasn't part of the fight, but he was right in the middle of it. Dust filled the air as Boots scrambled around him. He heard Mason yelling for everyone to back off. He heard Ray telling his men to stand down. But no one could stop what had already started. Weeks of anger and fear were erupting all at once. The officers had no choice but to trigger a full emergency lockdown. Sirens blared. Huge metal doors began to slam shut. A loud voice echoed through the speakers, ordering every inmate to get flat on the ground. Most of them listened. Some didn't. Officers rushed, pulling people away from each other, shouting for order. For a moment, it looked like the chaos might settle. Then something happened that pushed everything to a dangerous high. In the middle of the yard, a young Crow named Evan Price suddenly slipped past an officer and charged straight toward Mason. Evan wasn't a leader, but he was bold and angry. He'd been waiting for a moment like this. To him, Mason grabbing Luke looked like a challenge, and Evan wanted to prove himself. He rushed forward, yelling Mason's name. Ray Turner saw Evan move, and his face fell. He knew exactly what was about to happen, and he knew it would make things 10 times worse. Mason spun around just as Evan reached him. Mason raised his hands, ready to defend himself, but he didn't want to hurt Evan. He just wanted the chaos to stop. Evan didn't slow down. Officers saw it happening and pushed through the crowd, trying to reach them, but they were too far away. Danny watched from the ground, heart pounding so hard he felt dizzy. He wanted to shout for Evan to stop, but the sound caught in his throat. At the last second, Ray threw himself forward, trying to catch his own inmate before he reached Mason. But he was too late. Evan lunged. Mason stepped back. Officers rushed in, and in the middle of all of it, Evan tripped. He fell to the ground hard, landing right at Mason's feet, and the yard went silent. No one expected the fall. No one knew what happened. Evan groaned, holding his shoulder, confused and embarrassed. Mason stared down at him, breathing hard but refusing to move toward him, even though everyone expected him to retaliate. Officer Gaines, the tallest guard in the yard, reached them first. He knelt beside Evan, checking him quickly. The other guards formed a tight circle around Mason and Ray, separating them from the crowd. The sirens stopped. The shouting died down. The gangs backed away slowly, unsure of what would happen next. The sudden quiet felt strange, almost unreal. Warden Phillips stormed onto the yard with a team of emergency officers. His face was red with anger. He looked at Mason. He looked at Ray. Then he looked at the rest of the yard, at the fallen benches, the scattered shoes, the frightened inmates, realizing just how close Redwater had come to a full riot. He ordered everyone to be cuffed and moved. The Serpents were dragged one way. The Crows were taken the other. Danny was pulled up from the ground, shaking so badly he could barely walk. Luke was taken straight to isolation. Evan was escorted to the infirmary. Mason and Ray were both placed in restraints and led away through opposite gates. But as Mason was walking out, something caught his eye. On the concrete, near the wall, was the same hardened plastic weapon Luke had dropped. But it wasn't alone anymore. Next to it was another one, newer, cleaner, and clearly made by someone else. Someone had used the chaos to sneak it into the yard. Someone wanted the war to continue. Mason stared at it as the officers pulled him forward, and a cold feeling crept into his stomach. This wasn't just a fight. This wasn't just an accident. Someone inside Redwater State Prison was planning something far bigger. And the worst part? Neither Mason nor Ray knew who it was.